Welcome to Sports from the Couch.
I gotta say, it's the stupidest thing in sports.
With your host, Mike Mercado.
Players cannot stand him. Coaches cannot stand him. Most importantly, the fans can't stand him.
Brought to you by Mercado Airwaves.
I'm gonna say it once, and hopefully I'm wrong, but it's a disaster waiting to happen.
That is so bad, that is absolutely brutal.
Hello, friends, and welcome into another edition of Sports from the Couch here on Mercado Airwaves. I'm your host, Mike Mercado. I want to thank you so much for making us a part of your day, and it is a very special March 25th, 2021. The NBA trade deadline has come and gone, and your Chicago Bulls have been the biggest winners, in my opinion, as they get themselves an all-star center from the Orlando Magic as they land Nikola Vučević from the Orlando Magic, a all-star. Your Chicago Bulls went from losing to the Cleveland Cavaliers to now two all-stars on this roster, and we have to get into this trade. As you can see right over here on this side, you get yourself the all-star and also Al-Farouq Aminu. The Orlando Magic get Wendell Carter Jr., Otto Porter Jr., and two future first-round picks with some considerations and obviously some things that have to get worked out with protections and whatnot. But that wasn't the only thing that happened. We also saw that they were able to make this swing with Wagner and Cornette, as the Bulls will receive Thias and Green and Troy Brown with $1.3 million in cash considerations from the Celtics and $250,000 from the Wizards. The Celtics will receive Luke Cornette and Wagner. The Wizards will receive Daniel Gafford and Chandler Hutchinson. So there you go. We have ourselves a big trade deadline. I mean, there is so many things that we can talk about, but I made myself, as always, a little bit of bullets and points that I think we need to talk on just beyond what this means for the roster, because we could get excited about what this means for this Bulls team on the court. But we need to take a big picture look at this before we really dive into that. And the first thing that we need to address in what we saw in this trade deadline was a new philosophy in the front office. You know, the definition of insanity, we've all heard the cliche, right? It's doing something over and over again and expecting a different result. You know, it's that idea with this Bulls team that they were going through for the longest time under Gar Forman and John Paxson. This was a move they never would have gotten. This is a move they never would have been creative enough to do. I want you to remember that at one point, that front office didn't want to trade Luol Deng for Kobe Bryant. Now, mind you, I am a huge Luol Deng stan. That's my guy. Lou, loved him at Duke. But when you make a trade like that, you got to make a trade. They were never able to pull the trigger. They were the definition of wanted participation trophy for almost making the big play, for almost making the big trade, for almost landing LeBron James and Chris Bosh and LeBron James and Tracy McGrady and Tim Duncan, and the list goes on and on and on. That's not what happened here. What happened here were a group, a general manager, and the executive. The team of Mark Eversley and Arturas Karnisovas, we're never going to get it right because we see it both ways here in the city of Chicago. They did not let anything leak. Did you hear about this trade? Was Adrian Wojnarowski the greatest in the NBA when it comes to the scoops? You didn't hear about this. There were rumors, tremblings. You didn't see a social media post. They played it really close to the chest. And they maximized the most out of what they were given. And this is something that I tweeted out to friend of the show, Tony Gill. What's really impressive is they showed us what their philosophy is. They showed us what they think. This wasn't a scenario where they were talking out of one side of their mouth and, you know, the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing. And it was a really weird message and way that they were doing things to get to this point. With this new regime, they didn't say anything. There wasn't any hype. They got the job done. They found the guys they wanted. They evaluated the talents on this team. And they didn't hold on to this talent that they were invested in like this old regime did. Over evaluating these guys to the point where you're overvaluing them. And you can't do anything with them because you have put such a high market on them. That did not happen here. They saw enough of Wendell Carter, Daniel Gafford, Chandler Hutchinson, Otto Porter. They saw enough of them. And then you see the rumors for when Lonzo Ball was reportedly to be on the market, that Lauri Markkanen is rumbling around their butt. He didn't move. So that's an interesting kind of way to look at it. Was it that we were all just looking at the restricted free agent aspect of this? And then we were just trying to put the pieces together? Nobody from the Bulls organization ever told us that Markkanen was leaving. And knowing that they ended up making this big move now for an all-star center that none of us guessed. Maybe there's no validity to the fact that they want to get rid of Lauri. Maybe they are invested. Maybe they want to see more from him. I think when we think of Lonzo Ball, we see it as we know that's the weakness of this Bulls team, that they need a true setup point guard that's going to get these guys going. And now with Nikola and with Zach LaVine, you have an awesome pick and roll. And maybe Lauri Markkanen could play off of that. And it's interesting because Thaddeus Young and Lauri do a lot of what Nikola does, but, just one-sided of it. Because you're going to see that Nikola Vučević is going to just do it all. Play defense. Pass the ball, not as good as the Joker. But you're getting this 5-tool player. And now you got two guys that play his position that only do one of the two things that he does. So the fact that they held on to him shows that they at least want to see more of him. And here's the thing. Again, talking about the old regime to this regime. I trust their evaluation and what they want to see. Because I like what they've done, what they did in Denver. And I'm liking what they did now. They evaluated, they scouted, and they got the guys they wanted. That is so huge for anybody who's not here in Chicago to understand, to see a front office land the guys they want and smoothly. And around the league universally saying that they won the trade, that hardly ever happens. And we talked about it earlier. It's the two All-Stars overnight. How unbelievable is that? Again, as a Bulls fan, as a watcher of the NBA in the city of Chicago, as a Hoops fan, you never, ever see the Chicago Bulls in the position that they're the team that landed the big name, the 30-year-old All-Star. That they're the team that made the right moves when it was time to. They weren't the team being picked apart. They weren't the team trying to get the try-hard guys and we're just going to barely make it. They went out there and got their man. And they got somebody that's going to be a true co-star with your All-Star already. Overnight. None of us saw it coming. Now, I know a lot of people are worried about the draft picks. Here's the truth. Yes, draft picks obviously are always going to be very valuable. But you've seen in this trade deadline right now, people were saying that it wasn't enough for Lauri and a first-round pick for Lonzo Ball. So if that's the case, what's the value of a draft pick? And in the NBA, much more than the NFL, where the NFL, you could find future Hall of Famers in any round of the draft. The NBA, that lottery is the sweet spot, and we all know that. That lottery is the sweet spot, and it's very hard and very rare to get somebody very low. It's possible, but not probable, right? Well, if you're planning on being in the playoffs, if you're planning to be a real contender in the next year or two, or you're going to put yourself to be a playoff team, it doesn't matter. The draft capital of 2 first-round picks is not the same. Now, if you were a team like Orlando, who's making this big transition, yes, there's value in that because you might hit the lottery. But the Bulls, this is the same thing with the Chicago Bears. Okay, yes, draft capital is important. It is. But when you get your guy who's an all-star, who makes a difference, who would start on every team in whatever respective league you're in, if he or she would do that, it doesn't matter your draft capital because that is the Willy Wonka golden ticket. You might get it. You might get your LeBron James. You might get your Anthony Davis. Or you get yourself a Greg Oden. How many LeBron James are there? Like, that's the thing. I understand. And it's a way that front offices keep their jobs because they have that perspective of we have to see how this plays out and we still have capital and let us redo this. That didn't happen here. They weren't looking up for that. They were looking for the right now. They have a 27-year-old all-star who is taking this league by storm and first time getting into that stage. You got a 30-year-old center who's at the peak of his career, whose contract is going to benefit you at the end of it. Smart move. The other thing I wanted to talk about is kind of the fall of Wendell Carter. And I know fall sounds a little bit harsh, but Wendell just didn't succeed here the way I thought a lot of us did. And I think for him, it's just a man without a position. You know, he's really good at a lot of he's good at a lot of things, but he's not great at one thing. He's such a good dude too. I think he's going to be very successful in Orlando. It's just we wanted to see, and there was a lot demanded of Wendell Carter Jr. Same thing with Lauri. And I think we've kind of seen the goods and what the goods would be with Wendell. There's so much untapped potential with Lauri, especially offensively. With Wendell, did you ever think he was going to take over a game like Joel Embiid or a Joker? You know, and I think imagine him against Giannis in a conference championship or quarterfinals. Like, it just, you could see it. And you could start seeing what the front office was thinking. The Otto Porter trade, I mean, that was just, yeah. I like Otto Porter. He helped me win a few online games in NBA 2K20, but 21. But, you know, smart move that they were able, think about that. They were able to get rid of Otto Porter's contract. How is that even possible at this stage? Crazy stuff. And then the Lauri thing again, it's what they didn't do. They didn't trade Lauri Markkanen. And that's actions speak louder than words. Follow the money. All the cliches. We saw exactly what AK and Mark Eversley think of this Bulls roster. And I think this last run of games where they have struggled and they have lost, and it's not going to get easy. Like, look at, they have 2 All-Stars now, but they're still going to have a hard time getting into the playoffs. But I think they put themselves in a position where they can get that 6, 7, 8 pretty easy. But it wasn't the smoothest of weeks. And now it puts them in that position. And I wanted to read some of the stuff that we have here. So this is from Adam Amid. And you know what? Actually, before we do that, if we're looking for pronunciation, I actually found this over at NBA.com. It is Nikola Vučević. We'll get to you. We'll have time to get to that one. So Vučević ranks 3rd in the league in post-up points per game, only behind Joel Embiid and Jokic. That's the only person, literally the MVP favorites. The Bulls are bottom 10 in the league in post-up points per game. Vučević leads the NBA in points per game as the roll man in pick and roll, and that includes pick and pop with, Zach LaVine. That should be really nice. Bulls are top 5 in points per game from roll man. So the pick and pop of Vooch seems to fit. I think it's a wonderful trade, and I'm excited to see what this means next year. What this means possibly when it comes to bringing in a brand new star in a year or two. Because again, I do believe that in the NBA, it's probably a 3-horse race when it comes to who has the better 3 on the court any given time. So I think the Bulls, if they're trying to be a real contender, that next step comes from a free agency, a sign and trade, one of those scenarios. And we'll see with the Lonzo Ball thing. Cheers for 1 second. Thank you if you're just joining us here on Sports from the Couch. We are doing this live on Facebook. You can also check out the podcast edition if you missed any part of the show. The Chicago Bulls make a huge major trade. They are the winners of this All-Star sweepstakes we didn't even know was happening, as All-Star Nikola Vučević is now a Chicago Bull, and the Bulls got themselves a 30-year-old All-Star center, one of the best in the leagues. And what's interesting for Bulls fans right now is they've never been in this position. I think the first thing a Bulls fan saw were these critiques that they wanted to make about the draft picks. And he's 30 years old. And rightfully so, because they've gotten the Fugazis. Shout out to Donnie Brasco for other trades, other moments. This isn't Carlos Boozer. Shout out to Carlos Boozer. This is a guy who is one of the top 4 centers in the league right now, in a league that has amazing MVP quality guys. You got to give him credit where credit's due. Now, moving forward, are they going to win an NBA championship this year? No. Are they going to win one next year? No. They still have a lot of questions. We still have to see what's going to happen at the point guard position. But at the very least, we know that they have themselves 2 All-Stars. Last night, you're losing to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Tonight, 2 NBA All-Stars. And not just that, one of them is one of the best at his position. And arguably, the best in his conference right now when Joel Embiid is hurt. So I just wanted to jump on for a little bit, get my thoughts out there. It's an exciting day. The interesting about the Lonzo Ball thing, and we'll hit on that for a quick second, is, he's an unrestricted free agent. Same thing with Lauri Markkanen. I don't know if New Orleans is going to pay up to keep Lonzo. And if the Bulls are interested in that, then they can go and do something like that. Mind you, next year they're going to have to kind of flip a contract, cut somebody in like a Tomas Satoransky or a Thaddeus Young if they want a Lonzo Ball. But I think when you keep hearing that name, it's just, we know that's the weakness of this team. Do I think it's necessarily going to be Lonzo Ball come this offseason? I don't know. And again, after seeing this trade and it coming out of nowhere, I don't necessarily believe that there's a lot of leaks coming out of the Chicago Bulls front office. So who's to say Lonzo Ball is even really on their radar? That all just be made up from us in the media and just trying to put pieces together and figure this thing out. That's what's going to be very fun to see is this is what they're doing in the trade deadline. What are they going to do when they have a whole offseason to make a game plan? And what are they going to do come draft night? Are they going to try to trade to get back into the draft? Do they think there's any talent worth getting in this year's recruitment class? A lot of interesting stuff that can now break down because of what we've seen. And this is the first time. This is what a lot of people who have covered this team, watched this team, were really excited about for this trade deadline. This is the first time we're going to see them show us their cards. And shout out to that front office because nothing leaked. And out of nowhere now, your Chicago Bulls have themselves a 30-year-old all-star center in Nikola Vučević, and he will be a huge part and beloved in this city if he continues on to the way he's been playing. Wendell Carter Jr., Otto Porter Jr., some first-round picks are heading over to the Orlando Magic. Chandler Hutchinson and Daniel Gafford are going to the Wizards, and Luke Cornett and Wagner, who was brought in through the trade, are going to the Boston Celtics. So a brand new look, Chicago Bulls. Some other huge trades like Daniel Theis is now going to be also a Chicago Bulls. They get some toughness and some size. Super exciting. Just wanted to get on here. We're going to get some experts on. We're going to talk to some of our people so we could really break this down. The rest of the NBA had some really interesting trades. I mean, we could kind of just look a little bit. Kyle Lowry stays. Lonzo Ball stays put. Rajon Rondo goes to the Clippers. Lou Williams is going to the Hawks. He's going to be eating a lot of wings, right? We have our subs. Evan Fournier goes to the Celtics. What else we have? JJ Redick goes to the Mavericks. JaVale McGee goes to the Denver Nuggets. And do we have anything else? Obviously, the Bulls making their big trade. George Hill going to the 76ers. Was interesting, the Kyle Lowry stuff, right? Out of nowhere, that Victor Oladipo gets moved to Miami. But it was originally going to be Kyle Lowry, and Kyle Lowry now stays in Toronto. Really interesting. I liked Victor Oladipo. I actually thought he was going to be somebody the Bulls were looking at. I'm a little happier that they got Nikola, but nonetheless, a very interesting NBA trade deadline. And before we head out, that's another thing. We get spoiled in certain sports and in fantasy sports and in Madden and all these things of trades and whatnot. But this was an exciting NBA trade deadline. And a lot of it doing with the Chicago Bulls being in it. But this isn't the first time this Bulls organization has made trades. Like, we've seen a lot of draft day trades with the Garpax, era, and we've seen them make core pieces and bench mob pieces back throughout that regime. But this was the first time the Chicago Bulls landed a All-Star in his prime, controllable contract with another All-Star. This is something they didn't do with Derrick Rose. This is something they didn't do with the Jay Williams era, Jamal Crawford era Chicago Bulls. This is bigger than Jalen Rose. It's a bigger moment than Ben Wallace. They got themselves a true star. And you as Bulls fans should be excited. So we will be talking about this throughout the entire weekend. And now we know your Chicago Bulls have themselves a brand new All-Star in a center, a 30-year-old center, as the Bulls acquire the one and only NBA All-Star Nikola Vučević from the Orlando Magic. Thank you all so much for joining us for this special edition, this short, truncated Thursday edition of Sports from the Couch. The Chicago Bulls make a huge trade. If you have any thoughts, follow me all over social media. I'm on Twitter at Mike M Media, Instagram, Mike Mercado Media, and you can follow the show on Twitter at Couch Sports Talk. Like, rate, review, and share us wherever you get your favorite podcast at Mercado Airwaves. Teespring.com/Mercado Airwaves. We have swag. Check us out right over there. Teespring.com/Mercado Airwaves. Patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves. If you would like to support the network and get our interviews with athletes and celebrities before anybody else and ad free, that's Patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves. The Chicago Bulls, they're exciting. They made a huge move. Nikola Vučević, an all-star center, going to tag team with Zach LaVine and maybe get to the NBA playoffs. Fun, exciting times. We will see you next time here on Sports from the Couch on the Mercado Airwaves Network. I'm Mike Mercado.